It's that time of year again. I'm biased. In every election cycle, it's around about now that I start to get a lot of feedback about how my coverage is not fair. I used to be fair, now I'm not fair, and it's usually about how I am not covering their favorite candidate in a way that they believe that I should. Happened in 2016, happened in 2020, and it is happening now. It's part of my job. I understand this is just the silly season, and I don't take any of it personally. But anything that has a lot of passion, I think, does deserve transparency. And so I want to read an email that I got because I want to explain my reasoning for it, just so you guys know where I'm coming from. Now, this email is going to accuse me of being biased toward Donald Trump, and it is not to suggest that I don't get feedback saying that I am biased toward Democrats. I get a lot of it. Most commonly, it's that I only book liberals on the show, and most of my guests are media people. Most media people are liberals. It is what it is. Know that every time I have somebody on the show, what I am trying to get out of them, regardless of their persuasion, is something interesting and actionable for you to take into the wider world. That being said, on any side of the aisle, if there's somebody that you believe I should have on the show, please go ahead and leave their name in the comments below. Or if you want to get really aggressive and they have a public email, send an email to both of us and say, I'm a mutual fan of both of you, and I think that you guys should do each other's shows. That actually works a lot more often than you'd think. So with all love and respect to Aaron, who sent this email, I will read it verbatim. I'm noticing a change in this election cycle. I started noticing when comparing how you covered the Veep stakes. The coverage of the Republican VP candidates seemed more shallow than the coverage of the Democrat VP candidates. So I will just lay out here that there is a difference in terms of newsworthiness. When Donald Trump selected his vice president, it was a fairly orderly and normal way that a candidate selects a vice president. Now, obviously, there's a lot of newsworthy elements to Donald Trump. The fact that he is running for non-consecutive terms, that his old vice president hates him and won't vote for him, and so therefore he needs a new vice president, not to mention the circumstances surrounding Mike Pence. However, we did spend a lot of time talking about the Republican Veep stakes, and specifically how Donald Trump was making all these people go out there onto the media sphere and prove themselves as surrogates. Now, was I more animated when talking about Josh Shapiro and Tim Walz and Andy Beshear and everybody else that was part of the Democratic vice presidential Veep stakes? 110%. But that's because this was very much man bites dog. We have not seen anything like this late in the cycle. And Kamala Harris is somebody that had to reboot her entire public persona in a very short window of time. It was the first time that we had seen not only a promotion of somebody from the backbench of the party to the very forefront of it, but also it was the first time that we saw Kamala Harris make an executive decision. That is the case with all vice presidential selections, but I do believe, and I will defend, that it mattered a lot more when it came to her ticket. So was I more animated on it? And I will say this, more critical of Tim Walz being selected, especially as you see what the polling is in Pennsylvania currently? Yeah, you're probably right. Have I not hammered the J.D. Vance pick in the same way? If Donald Trump loses, I believe that the story will be written. Donald Trump was a historically unpopular candidate, and he lost 2 presidential elections because of it. I don't think that it is going to be because of J.D. Vance. Meanwhile, if Kamala Harris loses, and it's very close, and she loses Pennsylvania by 1.5 points, is there going to be a gigantic Josh Shapiro should have been the VP dialogue? Yes, 100% yes. I very much believe that. The Biden-Trump debate was all about how bad Biden was, which I agree, he had a horrible showing, but not about how bad Trump was in regards to his speech and mis- and disinformation that he spouted. So the easiest way that I could comment on this is to say that, well, one candidate got run out of politics because of that debate, and the other is still in a dogfight for the presidency. So yes, I was very hard on Joe Biden. And as it turned out, so were a lot of people. He's no longer in the race. However, I want to go one step deeper here into just my perspective. And I've been a feral internet creator for a long time now. So I'm in my old Ben Kenobi phase where I can kind of give a little bit of advice to people. And one of those things, in terms of your instincts when you're creating content for people, is number one, understand that the internet is free. And there's a lot of people that can put out a lot of different content. And some of it's going to be better produced than yours. Some of it's going to be worse. But the only thing that you can control is where you're directing your perspective. I believe that a niche I can fill is in part defined by me not doing any throat clearing. Political coverage is very often explicitly partisan. It is liberal or it is conservative. So if I'm going to try to run in the middle, what are the ways that I can totally define myself rhetorically? So in conservative media, if they are going to say anything nice about a liberal, they often have to then say, yeah, but they're terrible and they're communist and blah, 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 blah. On the liberal side, if you're going to compliment the Donald Trump campaign, you also then have to say, yeah, but he lies and he's a spout of mis and disinformation and he's an election denier, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that any of these points are invalid. Everybody has a right to say whatever they want to say. As a consumer, I find that stuff tedious. And so when, for me, the gigantic headline coming out of that June debate was that Joe Biden might have ended his political career, I wanted to define myself and my coverage by not having to append but Donald Trump also came off very dislikable and he also spouted misinformation and disinformation and there were 84 proven lies that he said. Boy, is there plenty of places for you to get that. I'm not going to be doing anything specific by saying the same thing that everybody else says. When I say something that is common amongst other political wisdom, I hope it is because it is so glaringly obvious I'd be stupid to say anything else, or I have said something incredibly smart that other people just start picking up on later. In your last episode, you spent over an hour detailing extremely technical criticisms of how Harris has to approach the debate, but there was no such criticisms of Trump. You're setting your audience expectations for Harris's failure. Now, this is the only thing that I want to push back on. I did debate prep segments for every single one of the Republican primary candidates. In them, I pointed out where they do well and where they don't. I do take the debate stuff very seriously, and I do it because I believe I've watched so many debates that I can give you guys a level of information from my perspective that's going to make the debate a more enriching experience as opposed to just the bombardment of people talking and yelling at each other. Whenever I do debate prep, and I want you to know this sincerely, I am not trying to shape the perspective. I am going in with a clean slate, and I'm doing my best to objectively tell you whether or not they are going to do good or bad. As for Harris, I actually came out liking her more than I thought I was going to going into it. My priors were that she was a very weak debater. And watching the Mike Pence debate, I saw somebody that was very dialed in and charismatic that did have flaws when she got into her improv. That's what I wanted to get out to you. Now, I will take the L on this. Donald Trump has debated more in the presidential sphere than anybody else in the history of the United States of America. So I did not do an updated version of Donald Trump debate prep. Part of that, from my point of view, was that I feel like we all kind of already know he's a big blustery bear. He, at his worst, which was the first debate against Joe Biden, ran over him so much that he made Joe Biden sympathetic, even though Joe Biden was not having a particularly strong night back in 2020. I'll take the L. Maybe I should have done an updated volume 2 of Donald Trump debate prep, but, you know, that's on me. In your latest Sunday Patreon episode, you stated that we no longer have to remind people about who Trump is or what he has done, but later in the episode, you question why Dick Cheney would support Harris. The answer is that Trump is only out for himself, and although Cheney is a vile human, being that he sees Trump is not going for the presidency for the betterment of the country, there are many people that seem to have that blind spot in regards to Trump. Okay, two things. What I said in the Patreon episode, for those of you who aren't a patron, takepoliticsseriously.com, $3 gets you 2 bonus episodes each and every week. What I said in that Patreon episode was that I don't believe the Harris campaign has the most they can gain from denigrating Trump. I believe that they have the most to gain by talking about why Kamala. Kamala is right now a fairly blank slate as it results to presidential candidates this late in the cycle. The definition of Kamala Harris, to me, is the entire race. That's what's going to matter between now and Election Day. And so either she can spend her time talking about what she is going to do, why she needs to run for president right now, or she can continue to slam Trump as being uniquely terrible and a relic of the past. Now, of course, she's going to have to do part of that. But I just don't think that there's a lot of Americans who are undecided on Trump. The New York Times Siena poll, I think, had the number at 91 or 92% when asked the question, do you feel like you need to know more about Donald Trump? And so that was the only point I was making, is that Trump, as defined as anybody can be in the world, good, bad, indifferent, you know where you stand on him. Kamala, blank slate. The Trump campaign is going to do everything they can to paint her as a dangerously liberal whack job, and anything that she has done in government has already made your life worse. What is her rebuttal to that? That's going to be a huge part of this debate. As for the Dick Cheney thing, look, it is not my job to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't say. My point of view as somebody who went to college during the first Bush administration, during the Iraq War, during that 2004 election, is that it is truly crazy to me that Democrats are saying nice things about Dick Cheney. It's just bonkers. My point with all this isn't to say that you shouldn't think that I'm biased. Everything is your opinion. My job is to make the product and throw it out into the world. I am not precious about what anybody thinks of me. What I want desperately is to continue to make a product that at the very least is clear in its message.